Alright, we are officially day 12 of 31 days of horror slash 31 days of Halloween. And if you're going to ask a fundamental question about why I do this every year, I think it's first and foremost because I love the genre. I love being a historian. And as a kid, I loved watching Monster Vision. I had a subscription to Fangoria. And there was a really long period in my life where I really thought my career was going to be a horror film director. Like, that's all I would ever do would make just explicitly horror films for the rest of my life. And I think there's like a part of me that still really, really wants that to be the case. I think if I had the initiative and I kind of got away from all the stuff holding me down nowadays, I could probably easily transition to being the next, Ed Wood maybe, maybe the next Ray Dennis Steckler. But beyond this fact that I love the genre and I love, kind of curating a lot of these films that really don't get enough credit for their impact on the history of cinema. Another reason why I do this is because a lot of times, you go through movies you haven't really seen before, just kind of going through the backlog. A lot of times you get some really crappy movies, and we've got plenty of those coming up, don't worry. But also, periodically, you find a movie that you've never heard of before, that you've never seen, which is not only like really, really surprisingly good, but it's also like insanely influential. And we got one of those movies today from 1971. It's a film called Blood and Lace. Now, I'm a pretty hardcore, horror, historian slash curator, and even I've never heard this movie before. So, I went through the online channels. I found a copy of the movie online, not really expecting much out of it, but as soon as it starts, I was absolutely blown away because this is like one of the most influential horror films ever made. That's like no question about it. No joke, no hyperbole. In fact, the very first scene of this movie is almost a beat by beat forerunner to the opening scene in Halloween. Now, granted, it's a dude walking around with a hammer instead of a knife, but it's almost like the exact same cinematography model. It's crazy. Like, John Carpenter totally ripped off this movie for Halloween. And here's the thing, you watch the rest of this movie, there are more scenes like, with meat hooks being put on freezers, and even a little bit of power tool action, which clearly influenced Tobe Hooper on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And at one point, we see a villain come out who looks almost exactly like Freddy Krueger. I mean, it's crazy. Got the sweater on and everything, the messed up face. It's a mask, but still. And you're like, God, this movie like inspired like three of the most important, genre staples of all time, but nobody ever talks about it. And you really should, because this movie is just terrific. When you talk about good exploitation movies, Joe Bob Briggs always kind of had that philosophy about separating the good trash from the bad trash. This is phenomenal trash. I absolutely love this movie. And it's one of those films where it's such a product of the time because you just got out of the Haynes Code, so you can go out there and do a bunch of stuff with sex and violence you couldn't do before. And this film has just like one of like the grimiest, like most disgusting premises for a movie ever. It's basically about these people who run like a halfway home for wayward youth, and they basically do it solely because they want to kill people. Like that's their whole point of operating it, is so they can take in these teenagers and then kill them, and butcher them, and do whatever. And the film it's basically about this young woman played by Melody Patterson, really old school. If you know who she is, you're beyond old. And she plays like a teenage runaway, and she gets into the halfway house, and slowly but surely, she realizes that these people are sick and depraved, and she's going to die. And I mean, there's actually like a lot of character development here. I mean, it's a pretty big cast. I mean, you get to learn about the operators of the halfway house. They're not completely one-dimensional psychopaths. I mean, they are still really good psychopaths. And it's a lot deeper and more nuanced and a whole lot more introspective than your typical, Friday the 13th, My Bloody Valentine type whodunit. And of course, there's that big fracas at the end where she confronts the psycho killer, and it's very, very well done. I mean, there are some great, great, great scenes in this movie. It's pretty shocking stuff too. I mean, it's very hard for a film from 1971 to make you go, oh, but this one, it'll do it. And granted, there's also like kind of a twist ending at the very, very end, which is like all shades of uncomfortable. I'm not going to give it away. You might like it, you might not, but it's something. This is just, like I said, I am just in awe of how great this movie was. This is just, you got to go see this if you're a horror fan. If you've never seen it before, it's just so influential. I mean, you can just see how it impacted so many films that come out afterwards. And it's really, really entertaining. Like, I really enjoyed watching this one. It's just perfect exploitation, early 70s cheese, just grimy and nasty and unremorseless. I loved it. All right, so yeah, looking at Blood and Lace, I'm gonna give it 3.5 Ghost Reese's Cups out of 4. Almost a 4 Reese's Ghost Cup movie. Almost. But, you know, gotta take it off for the acting here and there. It's not totally great. But just thematically, man, this movie is great. One of the best exploitation horror films of the early 70s for sure. Holds up way better than a lot of movies from the era. Alright, so yeah, those are just my thoughts on Blood and Lace. If you haven't seen it, you need to go see it. And we're going to continue churning throughout the 70s throughout the week. And I'm going to say this is the best decade, in my opinion, for horror films. And we got some movies coming up a little bit later, which are not really indicative of that. Don't want to spoil anything, but if you like bad movies, we've got some bad ones coming up. Stay tuned.